On the night of November the 13th, 1974, 6 members of the Defeo family were found murdered inside their home at 111 Ocean Avenue in Amityville. What happened inside that house would eventually become one of the most famous paranormal stories in history. Books were written, films were made, people claimed that the house was haunted by demonic forces. But behind the ghost stories and the Hollywood mythology was something very real, a brutal mass murder. And to this day, people still argue over where the truth ends and the legend begins. This is True Crime with Emma, and if you like true crime, please feel free to follow me on YouTube, TikTok or Spotify. Just search for True Crime with Emma. This is the true case behind the Amityville horror. The Defeo family lived in a large Dutch colonial house in suburban Long Island. To neighbours, they appeared to be a fairly ordinary family. But inside the home, tensions had reportedly been building for years. The father, Ronald Defeo Senior, was described by people who knew him as strict and intimidating. His eldest son, Ronald Defeo Junior, nicknamed Butch, had a troubled history involving violence, drug use, and emotional instability. Friends later claimed that the household was volatile and deeply unhappy. Then, in the early hours of November the 13th, everything changed. One by one, 6 members of the family were shot to death in their beds using a .35 Marlin rifle. The victims were Ronald Defeo Sr., his wife Louise, and 4 of their children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. Later that evening, Ronald Defeo Jr. burst into a bar shouting, "You've got to help me. I think my mother and father have been shot." Police followed him back to the house and discovered the bodies. Remarkably, none of the neighbours reported hearing the gunshots clearly, despite the weapon being extremely loud. Even stranger, all 6 victims were found in their beds. Most of them were lying face down, as if they had been shot in their sleep. Autopsies later suggested that while the victims hadn't been drugged, the sheer speed of the execution and the disorientating echo of the rifle may have paralysed them with fear. There were no signs of a struggle. There was no evidence of anyone being restrained, and no indication that any of them had tried to escape. The scene immediately baffled investigators. At first, Butch attempted to blame the murders on a mafia hitman, but under investigation, his story quickly collapsed. Eventually, he confessed, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast," he reportedly told detectives. Ronald Defeo Jr. never gave a consistent explanation for why he killed his family. Defeo said that his father was controlling and abusive. The household was certainly volatile. Ronald Jr. reportedly used heroin, LSD, and alcohol heavily, which may have affected his judgment and mental state. He also may have had some financial motives. He could claim life insurance money and had some resentment towards his parents. During the trial, his defense claimed insanity, saying he heard voices telling him to kill. However, psychiatrists for the prosecution testified he understood what he was doing. The victims, Ronald Defeo Sr. was 43, his wife Louise was 42, Dawn Defeo was 18, Allison was 13, Mark was 12, and John Matthew was just 9 years old. All of their deaths were believed to be quick, with little suffering. At one point, Ronald Defeo Jr. said that demonic voices made him do it. Some paranormal authors claim the house sits on cursed land, or that dark rituals happened there before the murders. Historians and investigators found little evidence for these claims. Ronald Defeo Jr. was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder in 1975 and sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences. For most murder cases, that would have been the end of the story. But for the house on Ocean Avenue, it was only the beginning. Just over a year later, in December 1975, a new family moved into the home. George Lutz, his wife Kathleen, and their children. The house was considered a bargain due to its violent history, and the Lutz were excited to be moving into their new home. That excitement did not last long. According to George and Kathy, almost immediately after moving in, strange things began happening in that house. They claimed they experienced cold spots, unidentified smells, slamming doors, green slime coming from the walls, and unexplained terrifying noises during the night. George reportedly became obsessed with the fireplace and began waking up at odd hours of the night, and his behaviour became far more erratic. Kathy claimed she experienced nightmares and paranormal encounters. The family also claimed that their children witnessed disturbing phenomena, including an imaginary entity named Jody who had glowing red eyes. Then came the detail that would become legendary. After just 21 days, the Lutz family fled the home, leaving most of their belongings behind. Fleeing through pure terror, afterwards this story exploded in the media. In 1977, author Jay Anson released the book The Amityville Horror, marketed as a true story. The book became a bestseller. The house on Ocean Avenue transformed from a crime scene into a worldwide cultural phenomena associated with hauntings, demons, and supernatural evil. But also immediately critics began to question the story. Investigators, journalists, and even people connected to the case began to point out inconsistencies in the Lutz family story. Some alleged that the hauntings had been fabricated or exaggerated for financial gain. Years later, attorney William Weber claimed the haunting narrative was partly created during conversations involving alcohol and brainstorming sessions between himself and the Lutzes. Meanwhile, paranormal investigators became divided. Some believed the house genuinely contained paranormal phenomena, while skeptics argue that there was never any credible evidence of any supernatural activity at all. Even today, the Amityville house remains one of the most debated paranormal cases in history. But underneath the ghost stories lies a tragedy that is almost always forgotten. 6 real people were murdered in that home. And whilst the ghost stories may be disputed, the violence that happened there was horrifyingly real. Because before Amityville became a franchise, before it became a tourist attraction, before Hollywood turned it into legend, it was the scene of a family annihilation carried out by Ronald Defeo Junior, a crime so shocking that decades later, the world is still trying to explain it. My name's Emma. This has been True Crime with Emma, and if you like my content, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and press the notification button so that you can join us next time.